Hello, once again, everybody. Welcome back to AWOK Talk episode 3. We are moving along in our sort of recap of Animal Warriors of the Kingdom comic book by Spiro. I am Brick Something, and this is
Adam from Highly Articulated.
If you haven't been following us, we have been doing this across both of our channels. So over here on the Brick Something channel, you're going to get us talking through these pre-recorded videos, talking about the comics pretty deeply, and then a little bit of news. And then we'll bounce over 2 weeks later to Highly Articulated, where we'll do a live stream called Monkey Business. Last one, we did a cool Q&A and answered a lot of questions about comic book lore. Actually, folks, like, it was nice to see, like, we're not the only geeky ones, right? There were all sorts of questions about not just what happened, can you clarify this, but like, what if this? And what do you think about that? So we're not alone.
Yeah, and I mean, this just in. Not on our video that we've done, but in another video, I have figured out now that the AI is unique to the ship. So each ship has a separate AI, which does not answer any questions. It just creates more. But stay tuned for more of that.
Absolutely. So that's a good preview. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the things that we've learned along the way, because Jason has been doing a little bit of a tour across other awesome YouTube channels and has been sort of sharing some of that information. The hope is that he'll be coming here to help us. You know, he actually did mention, which I really appreciated, about how he's enjoyed watching AWOK Talk and seeing how much we do kind of get right, but also how much we get wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he appreciated that, right? Which must be pretty cool as a creator to hear that other folks are enjoying this so much that they're like really reading into this stuff. So that's what this is all about. So again, go back if you missed it. You can check out that live stream. Go back to previous episodes of this here on Brick Something if you're a little bit lost and want to know exactly where we're at. But we'll do our best to kind of give you a little bit of background. So on that note, we're starting right in with issue number 3. Do you mind giving us a little bit of a recap of where we're at so far?
Yeah, so previously on Animal Warriors of the Kingdom, Pale and Atreyu are now on their adventure. The two young princes are a little more reckless than the rest of their tribes, so they've gone ahead and got themselves caught. They've been thrown into a gladiator ring by Kali, and they are now facing off against the Void, which is this big, nasty, bionic beast on the cover of issue 3. It's basically the two of them versus everything that Kali can throw at them.
So they're in the middle of it. They're in trouble. They're holding their own. Absolutely. Make no mistake. And we're wondering as an audience, like, how the hell are they going to get out of this? So while those two are doing their princely, egotistical, let's go take on the enemy ourselves, something's happening back at the Fearless village where Thane, Mala, Laranja, and Hannibal of House Fearless are kind of talking about their plans. And now we are here. What's going on?
So this is all those people that were left in the Fearless village realizing that Atreyu and Pale have gone off on their own, and they have a pretty good idea of where they've gone. So they're getting the ships together, getting their airships together. Like, how cool are those? They're like flying sort of pirate ships. And you notice too, there's some kind of dinosaur-looking creatures, presumably that were sort of on the planet or were created. We don't know. Check out episode 2 for discussion on that. But now they're off on a rescue mission, effectively. They know that these two dum-dums have probably got themselves in trouble. So they're sort of getting everybody together, and they're off to the Horde stronghold to see if they can't get Atreyu and Pale out of what they presume is probably a pretty sticky situation.
Just before we move on story-wise, this definitely does some world building again, just the physical geography of the area from the Fearless villages out to where this Horde facility is. You mentioned the ships. They're amazing. I don't know what technology is being used, right? So again, it raises a little bit of questions if you're super geeky. Maybe there isn't an answer. Maybe the answer is because it's cool. But like, you know, because you and I were talking about how the Horde are really high tech.
Yes, yeah.
And we kind of characterized the Chitauri as not very high tech. And then the Fearless were like kind of high tech because they had screens, and all of a sudden it's like, no, they somehow have hovering, propelled like ships that don't seem to have any jets. It's just floating.
They still have sails. So there's, who knows what's going on. Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely an element here of suspension of disbelief. Like, I think it's very much like, this is how these ships fly.
Right.
We're not going to explain it any further. You don't
Right.
need to investigate it any further.
Sure.
They just do this.
But at the very least, it has to be some kind of technology, which gives us a sense of where folks are at. Because
yeah.
I was like you, in my mind for the longest time, I was kind of like, oh, the Horde has all the tech, but there might be something like important in terms story wise to note that other folks do have some tech, some level of technology.
Yeah, I mean, I think on some level, it's not that the Chunari or the Feralists don't have tech. It's that they've largely moved away from it. I think it's more a choice than it is, a haves and have-nots. I think Chunari and Feralists have decided that the reset that the AI gave them is something that they're going to embrace, but not at the sake of completely removing technology from their lives. So I think where it's necessary, they will use it, and where it's not, they've chosen to go a little more au naturel.
Yeah, fair enough. And it just occurred to me as you were talking, like, oh, part of this might also be the fact that they were trying to move an entire village in secret.
Yep.
Whereas here they're like, we got to find these stupid kids.
We don't have a lot of
hurry
time.
up.
Get the
fly.
airships.
Who cares, right?
Yes.
Just appreciating a lot of the art again here. But in case this is one of your first episodes, the artwork and the storytelling, the visual storytelling and the scripting of this is fantastic. It's a great comic. It's not sort of an ancillary throw in so that we can sell action figures. This really is a comic book that's telling an awesome story that happens to be supporting a dope line of toys. So
yes,
just want to appreciate the artwork in here. I love the sort of the expressiveness of these faces, and even just the way Larana here is like the gesture of him. It's he's standing up, but there's like a curvature to that makes it feel more alive and more dynamic. I don't know, it's just so much cool things going on. And again, in the world building, we're seeing these like these are fearless, right? Yeah, they're fearless because these are fearless ships.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not 100% certain. I was looking at that too and thinking the exact same thing. I was like, these guys look awfully blue.
True. And again, I don't want to read too much into this, but I will just say, because when we have paper comics back in the day, I've heard comic book artists talk about the both challenges and opportunities that digital comics has allowed. Part of this is what I'm about to do on the screen, which is you don't get to do this on a regular comic book.
Yes.
Zoom in. And what that does is you get boneheads like me, pun intended, wondering about this. I don't know if you can see
the peg leg.
Yeah. But it kind of looks like a bone.
Like a bone. Yeah, I don't know what. Yeah. No, I noticed it too. I literally, while you're zooming in on there, I'm zooming in on my copy, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that he's got a bone leg.
Yeah,
but
okay.
He's the captain of a flying ship, right? Like
sure.
It makes sense. That's his peg leg.
And all respect to the artist and everything. This is not at all just, but and I'm hoping this is not, like, oh, don't do that, guys. But even here, there's something going on, maybe.
That one seems like more perspective to me. I think that one's just sort of like a weird little detail that got missed. I think the one is clearly a bone. The other, I think, might just be I didn't quite finish that leg.
Anyway, they're heading off as fast as they can, and in the distance they see this, right? So they know where they're going. They know where the
got
action
a pretty good
is.
idea that they know what's going on there.
Yeah. So our two young heroes are in the throes, and we saw this shot of the two of them looking up at something. Kali is ordering the attacks, like, screw it, let's jump out of the stands. Let's just go in and get these guys now.
Yeah, he seems to change his strategy. So last episode, we were talking about how Kali is sort of, testing Pale, and he wants to sort of see the limits of what Pale can do. He's angry that Pale is sort of defeating everything. Kali thought the Void would stop them, and it didn't quite work out the way that he thought. And so now he's sort of like, screw it, send in all the troops, just get it done. But sort of simultaneously, this happens, right? So
where is this coming from?
From a big, gigantic gun that Hannibal has.
Yep, they're jumping out of their airships, dropping in, and as you point out, right?
I need that for my Hannibal figure.
That's your G.I. Joe classified itch.
Oh,
right there.
That is absolutely like the sci-fi military thing coming in big time. Look at that thing. It's got like looks like spears. There's like canisters on it. It's got it's got everything that a kid that knows nothing about how weapons work would design a weapon. You know what I mean?
Right.
The weird little sight, even like, what could that? That's like a sight from like a toy gun you'd get as a kid. But I love it.
Yeah, no, it's great, and it looks great in the arms of an armored kind of thing. Like this is Masters of the Universe, right? This is Flash Gordon, this is Black Star, and all those kind of mishmash properties of fantasy and sci-fi. So there's Hannibal alongside Thane as well with Mala, and they're going in there to
Mala's in there
save their
too. Yeah,
kids.
they're getting right in there.
So battle occurs, right? And you see the two young princes' martial prowess, right? Their skills. We get to see where they get it from a little bit, right? Their parents are like,
yeah, like father, like son, it seems.
Yeah.
And like mother, like son in the case of Pale, because Mala is definitely holding her own in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got Hannibal who's sort of standing over defeated, injured Kali. And if you take a look at that, that doesn't look like a tiny wound. You saw him take that shot. Armor is steaming. And so just again, thinking a little bit about his body and sort of what happens when he gets injured. Again, these two just wrecking shop.
Yeah.
Look at just these horrid fools just getting knocked.
I think there's just a lot of competitiveness between them. They're both very proud. Their fighting abilities are somewhat sort of how they define themselves, I think. So they both feel as though they're kind of bigger and stronger and faster than the other. And then, you know, just like we saw Pale and Atreyu in the gladiator ring, this is them just putting into practice everything that they know and knowing that they're going to have each other's backs.
Yep. I think there's also the idea of a common enemy and a common goal in this case, like let's save our kids, as well as address the common enemy in Kali and the Horde. But I also think that this also parallels Pale and Atreyu fighting together, which is kind of cool, right? We see these, to put it in action figure terms, two packs coming together, right? We commented on this last time. It's like, oh, cute, furry animals with adventures. Like it quickly like teeters back and forth between sort of like a fun adventure thing to a kind of a brutal, vicious, violent, I guess.
But and we talked about this, I think, on Monkey Business the other day, where Kali is always down but never out. You know,
yes,
Kali's not getting a spear through his chest. He's getting hit by what we believe to be kind of an energy weapon.
Yeah.
And we know that he always seems to be able to recover or get a new clone body or whatever. So even though he's defeated, I didn't for a second think that, oh, that's the end. That's Kali, you know, he's done. This guy, on the other hand, I think that might be a fatal blow.
Yeah. No, I don't think
he's not coming back from that.
I don't think there's clones of this hyena. You know, same here, right? A little bit more the sort of like the brutality of this fight. We see Mala as well, just getting in there, ready to slice. And then this just awesome, like close-up of an unnamed soldier. It's just so cool.
Like with the spittle coming out of his mouth, like just the anger and the
so good. I'm jumping around here, but I can't wait to get some of this variety of armor, like these helmets here with the horns maybe, and sort of this, I forget what they're called. Again, we see more battles, some great shots of mounted Fearless. That same mount that we've been looking at, which is going to be great someday, maybe if we get it in toy form. This is not like just an easy win. We see some of their forces going down. And I do want to so we've got them on horseback with crossbows and spears. And I do want to point out again, Horde with some technological advantage. These are like straight out of Star Wars. This drawing actually reminds me of like a Mobius. You know, familiar with the artist Mobius, right?
Definitely.
That like kind of like hinted at detail here. So I mean, they've got big gun battlements ready to go. So this is a big fight. It's a big scene. This, to me, it's very cinematic, right? It's in this comic book, but again, if we could ever see this on the screen, how he handles the art and the layouts are very widescreen, you know, very like letterbox.
Yeah, and we get a lot of them during the battle. There's a lot of the big wide shots with lots of details. You know, you can sort of see that all the characters that we know are in here, but there's way more people involved. Like it's not a 1v1. This is, you know, the Horde versus the Chunari and the Feralist. There's much greater stakes here than we've seen previous. Like, this is full on.
Yeah. Again, more battle stuff. Love seeing this action shot of the mounts.
Yeah.
So good. The
Yeah,
detail.
before this, I kind of got the impression that they were like more like a cow. Almost, you know, like they seemed kind of clumsy, but then when you see this, they kind of made me think about a much maligned section of a Star Wars film. But on Canto Bight, when there's those sort of horse animals that just rage through the city, that's kind of what I got from these things here.
Absolutely. I see that here too. These are definitely closer to horse than anything, right? Battle horse. And even the mount almost gets more detail and expression and energy
in the heat
the
of
rider.
Battle, he's a lot more into it.
We kind of alluded to in the intro that Jason's been going around talking a little bit more on different channels about the comics. He did mention something about, like, mentioned cameos, right, of some characters in the arena. And so I bring that up because so far in the previous streams we were looking at, there were a lot of soldiers, but these aren't quite soldiers, right? Some of these look like maybe gladiators or something else that were here, right? So I'm looking at these guys that very much remind me of figures like Cordoon.
Yeah.
This one totally caught my eye because I'm always looking at, like,
that one looks like a cat, like a house cat.
Yeah. And then we see the couple here doing battle together. So good. And then again, one of those awesome wide shots that's like straight up, I've been watching Lord of the Rings and want to draw something on that scale. The cavalry going up against the infantry.
I got a little bit more of like a Kurosawa kind of a vibe, like where they keep showing like Hannibal and Thane and Mala, a few against many. It had sort of a Seven Samurai kind of a feel to me, where despite the numbers, they don't really consider it risky. They're like, we're just better. We are elite trained fighters.
So here's the right, this is Return of the Jedi. Again, I can't help but my brain, we keep doing this, but
that ladder leads to the Millennium Falcon.
Yes, exactly. That now brings us to our heroes escaping. It's seemingly like they're safe and away on their airships, flying away. Again, some more awesome pterodactyls. What's the deal? We see our leaders. People are injured, right? Again, the shot, the relationship is complex at best and beautiful, really, right? These allies.
Yeah. I mean, you get the impression that they've known each other forever. I think they probably have that moment that we've seen where they're sort of butting heads every single time they meet up again, and probably, like, you know, they have a couple of drinks and then it's this. Every single time. There's just a dynamic that works for them where they're absolutely the best of friends and would clearly sort of rush into a hot situation without any hesitation because they just know who each other is.
Yep. And I also think what's happening here is it's helping to unite the sort of anti-Horde forces together, right? I think in the beginning, it was a little bit of a question mark, but now we're in this moment here where it's clear that at least these two houses are standing up against Kali. It begs the question as to how other houses are going to respond, right?
Yeah, who's going to be next position. And why, you know, will they pick a side one way or the other? We talked a little bit on Monkey Business, and when people were asking questions, a lot of people were sort of having that question of, like, you know, what is Kali's intention?
Yeah.
We're getting to boiling point, right? Where the Chunari, now that they have Pale and Kali knows that they have Pale, the Chunari are now in his sights. And being as ruthless as he is, I don't think anybody is safe. So I think what we're going to see is as Pale and his merry band of warriors moves from, you know, one house or one tribe or one faction to another, Kali is going to follow. And there's almost going to be, you know, in a weird way, like Pale's somewhat at fault for Kali kind of coming through these places, but it's going to open their eyes to the fact that whatever Kali said he was going to do for you, he's not. He has no intention of doing anything that doesn't benefit him, and if he needs to burn your village to the ground, he will absolutely do that. And so I think there's going to be this rising threat of Kali that we're going to see going forward that I think we're already seeing.
Yeah, exactly. There's still a question of the two other houses that they mentioned in issue 1, which were the Pacadine and the Bovidicus. We still haven't seen those. Like, these are the 4 great houses or whatever, which is interesting because then we switch to a completely different society in the Lepins. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, it's the Lepus village, Lepus.
What do we know about them from what's happening, you know, in just a couple of panels? What's being established about who this other house that really wasn't shown or mentioned as being named as one of the 4 great houses or whatever? So who are these folks?
The airships are sort of moving along, and they say, you know, we're going to get to this Lepus village, and this village seems to have a very pastoral existence. You know, they're farmers. It's this sort of idyllic land. You know, they've got this beautiful sort of rolling hills overlooking some water. We were talking before we went on about this panel, specifically this sort of overview of the village and just how beautiful and kind of quaint and quiet and peaceful it seems. We talked about this a little bit before in other episodes. Unique architecture, unique sort of look to the village. You know, Utama and Jason aren't just throwing this world together. You know, this isn't more of the same buildings. Like, this has clearly been thought out. This is a different culture. This is a different little pocket of the world. And I love this one. But yeah, the silence is immediately broken. And it's not by, you know, the airships as we kind of thought it might be. This giant Princess Mononoke type boar just come barreling through the forest with all his teeth and horns and the snout and everything about him just looks nasty. Like,
that thing is fucked up.
He looks evil. You know what I mean? Like, this is in the same way. And I immediately thought of Princess Mononoke, where that boar has basically been infected by a demon. That's exactly what I thought with this guy, where it's got like a zombie brain that just wants to destroy and just, you know, ravage this village. You know, we talked about the Void. So this is another one of Mala's creations. There he is in all his ugliness.
Unlike the Void, this is on all fours. This is very much like what a boar would be doing, right? There's not a whole lot of anthropomorphized body. Obviously, it speaks. It's doing something different. There's something going on here. And it's got this armor presumably like built into him because it looks like those are rivets, right?
That's the impression that I got for sure. So, this isn't armor that he's wearing, but it's armor that's like installed on him almost.
So the villagers sort of caught unaware. They're kind of look like they're in the middle of farming, clearly like inspired by Asian cultures, the hats and everything. I mean, those are very common across Asia. Clearly, like, that's where the inspiration is coming from for this particular culture of animal warriors, or I guess in this case, animal farmers, right?
Animal farmers of the kingdom.
They're running. They're freaked out. Like, what is this monstrous thing? They didn't look like they were fighting back, which is our cue for this character.
Usagi Yojimbo.
Into. This is a character that I know you're really into. Tell us about him.
I love this guy. This is Kanji, a very Asian inspired name. He's just immediately jumps in. He knows exactly what he needs to do. Gets the bow out, gets the arrow. You know, he's doing his flips. He's doing it like, and it's all so fluid. He's very light on his feet. He's very agile. Very different fighting style compared to Shunari and Feralist. You know, more world building, more sort of building out of the different species and the different characters and sort of what they do and how they inhabit this world. I just love this whole page.
And you know, I think he's inspired some of the other. I keep forgetting Lepus. And so
Lepus. I assume.
I don't know why I'm saying Lepine, like is like lupine, but anyway, yes.
Well, Lepine is rabbit.
Rabbit.
Lapin is French for rabbit.
But we've got them inspired, like they're jumping in, they've got spears, so you know, and again, just speaking to the world building, that they didn't have a machine gun like like Hannibal had, but we do get this sense that this particular character is special, is somehow particularly skilled. The others like are inspired by him taking the initiative to just jump in and take on this massive boar beast thing.
But it definitely feels like he had another life before this, and clearly he can handle himself. First with the bow and arrow, but also with the blades.
The battle ends with a very Akira Kurosawa sort of ending, right? That
the rush, the
yep.
whoosh of the kind of wind. Yeah, absolutely. It has a very anime vibe. It has a very Kurosawa kind of feel to it.
Yep.
Again, with the really wide shot. After the finishing blow, I think what they're going for here is like a Zanshin kind of thing, like he's kind of recovering the energy in that pose where he's just sort of standing there. There's a whole philosophy behind Zanshin that is quite fascinating, but I don't know if it's relevant. But there it is.
You're a practitioner, right?
I do kendo. So
yeah, that's right. What I'm seeing is the big sweep, pause, and then the fall, right?
Like almost like the board stopped.
Yep.
And you're kind of like, oh no, I thought he got him, and then it just kind of falls over.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. When we get the cartoon, I imagine that's how that shot will go. Yeah.
And then, of course, look. Yeah. I love this kid.
I love all of them. Like they feel like a very jovial bunch. They feel it feels very lighthearted, like they've just slain this beast, obviously.
Yep.
But there's a different vibe to this community as well.
But of course, that's when our heroes that we've been following earlier arrive. We get the impression from the dialogue that this is not necessarily the first thing that they've had to deal with. To what extent is this an intentional thing that's being done by the Horde, right?
Yeah, we get a little bit of exposition in just like one little bubble that says that this boar has kind of been doing this. This boar is sort of known in the area. Now, whether they know that it's a Jadu
right
sort of horrid thing, or whether it's just a beast that happens to be around, I don't know.
We don't know, but I assume not. I mean, they're not naming the Horde or anything. It's just sort of this beast, as if it's kind of doing it.
Yeah, kind of. There's
They don't seem to link it to Kali or anything, which I think is going to be the background for the conversations that then happen with these heroes that are coming in with the airship, right? So that's where we get to the arrival, right? They're not unfamiliar with the fearless ship.
There's a relationship between all these groups. We don't know all the details, but clearly, they're not surprised to see an airship. They're not scared.
We get Mala doing her best C-3PO impression to try and convince the Ewoks that they should join the fight, right?
Yes, totally.
By the fire, Tarantadash, right? So what's the pitch? What's her pitch to them?
I mean, the pitch is the same to everybody, right? Kali is not your friend.
Yeah.
You're just going to get crushed under his fist, effectively.
And within these couple of pages, we get some information about who the Lepus are. There were the 4 great houses that they were off on a mission to try and reach out to get them an ally. And they did not mention these folks. So there are the 4 great houses, and sort of within them, I guess, there are other houses that they work with or are allies with. The Lepus essentially are like the farmers who have this relationship with Fearless.
Right? Those are the 4 that we heard about. They made a point that those were 4 great houses.
Yeah.
The Chunari, House Fairlist, Bovidicus, and Pacadine were all called out by name as important. There are other tribes that we know that there are pirates because of the action figure line. We know that there's the Lepus village. We know that within, the Horde area, there's townsfolk even. A lot of those guys in the gladiator ring were just, the accountants on a Friday night. Or whatever they do. I don't know what they do, but
and I guess it puts the conversation a little bit in a different light, in that we saw that they don't necessarily have the same level of defenses. So if the Horde were to come, it seemed like putting down that giant beast was a struggle. And so if someone came with giant mechs and dragonfly mechs or whatever, so we see them talking with a leader who is sort of seen here, Grizzly, another larger rabbit, right? And with an eye patch, they're breaking it down. But then all of a sudden things are interrupted with this cute as hell rabbit child running.
I want that figure
to let them know something's up. I love the description, right? An arrowhead, right? A giant
metal
arrowhead
in the sky.
Yeah. a metal arrowhead in the sky. So they seem familiar with ships, at least the fearless ships, but this seems like something new, right?
This seems like something that they've never seen before, yes.
Yeah. And that is actually where we'll leave things in terms of the recap. So it'll leave us a little bit more to figure out, well, what happens. And again, if you're sitting here cursing because we just gave you this this cliffhanger, guess what? Like, this story is available to anyone who wants it right now, and you can get it fairly instantly over on spirotoys.com. Look for the comics. You can download a digital version and have it in your hand in seconds. $2.
$2 a comic.
Let's talk a little bit about like where you think the story's at in terms of like big takeaways that you had from this little section that we were talking.
I mean, I think the big takeaway is that these houses are all very proud. We still don't know exactly how the AI picked, who to change and why, but we do definitely see that people seem to have grouped themselves together as like-minded individuals. Everybody in the Lepus village seems to be very content with the lifestyle that they have. The idea that a good day's work is a valuable sort of way to spend your time, and it's a sort of a noble profession to be a farmer, and a noble sort of endeavor. But I also get the impression that a lot of these houses are familiar with each other, and they all, they're proud of who they are, and they're kind of proud that they're not the other guys. So there's that competition going, but there seems to be a mutual respect among all of them. These rabbits seem to have quite a lot of respect for House Feralest, and vice versa. But also, I think we've gotten more of just how ruthless Kali is. I get the impression that every morning when Kali wakes up, he chooses violence. I think this is going to be, another tribe that sort of comes on board under the looming threat of Kali.
For me, what's great to see in this little section is the continuation of that effort to bring people together against Kali. Yeah, things didn't quite go the way that they had planned, right? They had to take this little side quest to go rescue the two young guys and actually face Kali a little bit earlier than expected without getting everybody else on board. This has now led them to go and reach out to this whole other society in the Lepus village. Yeah, I think that's fascinating to me. And then the other piece is just starting to show us a little bit maybe of what the Horde seem to have going on. Because again, I don't think that the Lepus necessarily know that giant boar is coming from the Horde.
Agreed.
Why don't they? Why are Jadu and Kali creating these things and sending them off without any clear we're here because of the Horde? What is this sending out these beasts to go do this dirty work without, waging open war, if you will, right? So I am kind of curious about that, and kind of sets a little bit more mystery, I guess, as well as sort of slowly giving us a little bit of insight into what the Horde might be up to. So I think this section of the comic books also hints a lot at what is possible in the toys. And so let's start with the toys that we either have already gotten that we haven't yet talked about, or ones that we know are coming. What we've seen so far are not necessarily figures that have come out in this section. It's more figures that are on their way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've already kind of talked about Mala, and right, I think we did actually talk about Hannibal last time and showed his turnaround.
Yeah, we looked at Hannibal's turnaround as a figure that is coming. I believe Hannibal is coming in wave 6, if I'm not mistaken. So wave 5 is the Mala wave, with Mala, Jadu, Kanji, as well as 2 other figures.
Since the last time we recorded AWOK Talk, Jason has gone around and talked about different figures, and he did say some interesting things about Hannibal. He made it pretty clear and open that this is a completely new buck. Not as big as Thane, but bigger than most of our characters that we've gotten so far.
Yeah.
So this is kind of an in-between, larger buck.
The Gladiator wave will have a couple new parts with Jaguar, a Hawkin, and the Hyena. Then wave 5 will be all brand new parts, all entirely brand new parts. Wave 6 will be all brand new parts, top to bottom, which opens the door for wave 7 and beyond to have a lot of new characters and new species, new sizes of figures. Because like you said, once you get the buck in there, it can get reused sort of wave after wave, depending on sort of what you want to do with it.
Yeah, I love thinking about that side of things. And that'll be a point where now we'll have all these pieces to play with, and we'll see what happens. Wave 7. My sense of the way that I've seen Jason talk about it, even though they're going to have a bunch of pieces, Wave 7 could still see some unique things to the line. We haven't talked about Laranha.
I think in the first episode we touched on the fact that there's a turnaround, and that it's been discussed that Laranha will be, you know, in the line at some point, and that he will come with soft goods. You know, it's easy to say something like that. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen, and, you know, in Wave 7 or something like that.
Sure.
I understand that Jason wants to make that figure. Now, who knows?
Okay, so we've got Laranha, and so that's cool. That may or may not be coming, but again, yet just more variety coming in the line. And then we are getting a Kanji figure.
Yeah, so Kanji is going to be a slimmer buck than we've seen before. To the best of my knowledge, from what I've heard, he's going to share some parts with at least one other male figure. You know, having this slimmer buck, you know, opens the door for lots of other creatures. Like I was saying about how excited I was to get rabbits in the comic book.
Yeah.
Because then you can get more kind of slim, agile creatures. I really want a fox. I really want like a domestic cat. I want an orange tabby. I've made that known.
That's a personal request.
Try to get that one done. We haven't seen the character in the comic book yet, but we have seen the turnaround, and we have seen sort of notes about birds. So the I guess it's probably a raven. I keep calling it a crow, but it's probably a raven because it's called the raving. Basically, you know, the same slim buck, but just with bird feet and sort of feathered winged arms. Cool. Every time we get a new buck, it just opens up the possibilities for more species, for like more cool stuff. Yeah. And I can't wait. I'm here for all of it.
Yeah, as much as we say, like, this is a great comic book that's not just sort of ancillary material thrown in with a figure. Yeah. This is also a great comic book that is completely tied with and absolutely marketing a great action figure line. And this is just going to get us some cool new stuff. With the posability of these things, we'll be able to effectively hit that pose, right? And
100%. That's easy. Like hitting that pose that Kanji's in that frame will not be a problem at all.
Or even like some of these.
I think you can hit every. I think you can hit everything that he does in all those shots. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Oh, so good. I believe that covers all characters that at least we know of that are in the works. What about ones in this section of the comic book that we want to see turned into toys? And like, I need to see this character because this is not a mount, it's not a steed, it speaks. I would love to sort of see something like this be this truly unique thing, which opens the door for other four-legged things that we can talk about in a second. But are you interested in something like that? And what do you think is the possibility that will move into these like four-legged characters?
I think if space and money weren't an issue, then I would be into like every single thing that we see in every panel of every issue. Yeah, it would be really, really cool, but it's not very high up on my list. I would honestly prefer to see more uniquely armored Horde, more uniquely kind of sculpted Horde heads, like more Horde figures than I would want. You know what I mean? Just so that like you don't have to pop and swap anything, and it's just readily available. You could just sort of fill out a whole shelf with unique figures. Again, you know, the young rabbit, the little kid rabbit. Like, I would love to see that. I would love to see, you know, the Feralist townsfolk, the common people, the Rabbit King. You know, I don't think we'll ever see that figure, but I'd buy that one for sure. Now, if that boar walked on two legs and had hands and was more of like an action figure, I'd be all for it. I mean, I can't wait to get the Void, which is effectively a very similar character to the boar in terms of functionality within the story.
Sure.
Now, obviously, design-wise, he's more.
That's interesting that you would make that distinction.
They're the same. I mean, they're just a destructive force.
But you would buy the Void because of that versus the boar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a couple of reasons. It's more anthropomorphized, and two, shelf space.
Yeah.
Anything that stands vertically is going to take up less shelf space. I mean, depending on how you did it.
I was gonna say, yeah, like Mythic Legion's troll,
I think it
right?
would have to be that big is kind of the thing. Like
Yeah.
it would have to be of a scale that made it scary. Because if you did it, you know, a little bit bigger than Thane, it would not have the same impact.
All right. I feel like I wouldn't be doing myself justice without coming back to this. Again, these mounts, we've seen them before, but the reason I bring them up is because Jason recently on a different channel, either over on Kevin's Toying Around or on Hella Dope Toys, one of those two, where he mentioned the possibility of mounts. And he seemed to be talking about it as if, yes, this is something we've thought about. I think he kind of name checked Mythic Legion's horses and moose as sort of a comparable thing. That's more likely to happen than necessarily even mechs or vehicles. I just wanted to name that because one, I want these.
Yeah, me too.
And even just in the comic book, it can't be by accident that they're drawing them in different colors, and you know that like to establish that no, these things come in different colors. So we can repaint the buck in different ways and sell them to you.
That makes it so that you can sell it in different waves, I think. Yeah. But even if you only got one, I would love to see one with an alternate head, so that if you buy two, you don't necessarily have two exactly the same on a shelf.
Yeah, fair enough. I've lived through that with Mythic Legions and Four Horsemen, where it's like, no, it's just the Headless Horseman. That's the only horse I need in my life. And then all of a sudden I somehow got into my head that, well, we've got effectively the Four Horsemen of Mythos. I can't have them without their horses. That's just criminal. So now, yeah. You're beating me though. You've got a moose on top of all that. So
I've got two. Yeah, I mean, we've got the two horsemen that have been released. And then I've got two Balius, two Boreas, two Alder. So the two standard horses, and then two of the moose. And I've got two of the next horse, as well as the horsemen. That they're like, mounts are. I love mounts because I think, you know, as far as like play value, it's like adding vehicles to the line. You know, you're adding different shapes, you're adding different heights, you're adding textures and stuff that you're not necessarily going to get with just the figures. So that's why I really, really love them. Speaking to the point of like not doing the mechs, and Jason also said like play sets doesn't really work. If they only did this mount, like this sort of horse cow thing, and the dragonfly mech for the Horde, I'd get a couple of each, and I'd be good to go. I wouldn't necessarily need anything else beyond that. That would satisfy my appetite for vehicles, as it were.
Well, on that note, he did pretty clearly on Hella Dope talk about vehicles and mechs. And he even went so far as to say, you know, we thought about it and it seems not likely because of the size. But they were talking about some of the smaller ones. And he mentioned the Tachikoma, or he mentioned the small the mech tanks from Ghost in the Shell, how he named it. And that he did name that if it were something maybe like that, it could be a possibility. But I, of course, would totally be into that and likely buy it. But what it does is it also kind of reminds us of the whole world, in that if you had a mount that's very like sword and sorcery kind of thing, but then we'd get the tech. Now, he did say, as you pointed out, no to play sets, just at least at this point, not even something that they can even think about, and probably wouldn't be realistic. So things like this maybe are not likely. But he did mention the possibility of maybe something like a Dio, something smaller that you could use as a display, which I think is fascinating. There's been a lot of great third-party folks out there creating cool Dios for Mythic Legions and other figures, right? Even Masters of the Universe to a certain extent. What would you want to see in something like that, since Jason's kind of thrown that out there?
The obvious place to start is in Jadu's lab. The scenes that sort of Jadu and Kali share. When I look at stuff like the Chunari village and sort of the Feralist stuff, and even the Lepus village that we just looked at, I look at a lot of that stuff as something that I could relatively easily craft myself out of, you know, foam and cardboard and fabric and things like that. But when we start getting into like the cloning tanks and the computers and the you know, the holograms and the
Machinery.
all the very mechanical stuff, this sort of inorganic stuff, that stuff is a lot harder to recreate. It's not impossible, and you can find bits and pieces here and there. And you can put that stuff together, but it's a lot harder.
It's more work. Absolutely. It's a lot more work. Yeah, it's a lot less forgiving.
It's a lot less forgiving.
And if you were going to do the route of the sort of kit bash, where you're going down to models and other pieces, which I've seen people do with great effect.
Yeah.
But again, it's when I say it's harder, it's that you're dealing with little pieces. You have to curate those pieces, put them together, and lay them down, as opposed to rock, okay, brick, right, and create texture. And it's again forgiving because you can just have some inconsistencies.
It's almost better the more inconsistency you have, which is why it's really easy. And if you've never done, you know, brickwork or rock work, try it, because it's surprisingly easy. It's not easy to be good at, but it's really easy to get into it and be like really happy with your
we are not at all claiming that yes.
No, no.
But that said, it makes sense, as you say, to start off with like a lab, a Horde science facility or something, some of those scenes. I wonder to what extent, like when he says playset, like some of these dios, aren't they effectively like playsets? And I wonder if the distinction is like having to work in play feature, not more play features and that kind of stuff, versus like a
spring-loaded shooting missils.
Yeah, or like a rotating door for the cloning facility. You know, like if you're like, no, it's a static thing. I don't know if that's what he meant, or if he meant more like gestures, if you will, of scenes like rock wall, hallway door, you know, like that level of dio. So
I think what it ultimately comes down to, and I don't know this, but I think really what it comes down to is like just cost of tooling and of that kind of stuff. So when you start talking about playsets for 6-inch scale, once you start talking about walls, you know, the walls got to be at least as tall or taller than the figures.
Right.
And then how wide do you go? And then if you do a floor, it's kind of the same thing. And that mold is going to have to be at least as big as that thing, unless you do it in pieces. And then it's assembly costs become expensive, because every step costs, you know, another $1 or whatever it is. Or does it get shipped to you in a box like Lego and you're going to put the whole thing together? I don't know. But when you're talking about like a computer or a chair, they're not that big. So, you know, if you can fit more of them into one mold, you get sort of more value for money. So I think that's what he's kind of referring to is like something that is a building, right? Something that takes up, you know, height and width more than, you know, a physical object that kind of gets handled by a figure or whatever, right? But a computer, I think, is, but then again, you know, you could go to Walmart and get these weird sets for kids that are like $20, and you could basically use 2/3 of that part, spray paint them and add more detail, and they'd look the part. So,
well, I think there's something to be said about like not wanting to leave money on the table. And so like if there is I think there's a market for wanting to give these figures an environment to live in. If I'm just going based on that and just thinking about maybe ease of production, if I'm even thinking just walls, like, you know, rock wall, like the hallways is where I go.
Yeah.
The hallways that we see Jadu walking down every now and then.
I would buy all of it. I'm here for all of it. But you're right. Like floors are easier to make than walls, because floors are flat. Walls, you know, especially in a like a stronghold like we've seen in the comic book, there's more texture, there's more recessed sort of levels and things to how the wall works. So even if it was a wall, I don't even need a play set. Just give me sort of interconnecting wall pieces, and I'd be okay with that.
Which again, I guess begs the question as to why Spiro would shift gears so drastically to do that, when we know that there are a lot of talented folks out there, and perhaps there was a market, right, for other folks to just do that. And we do see people like Crashbox Customs doing some level of that for photographers, but those tend to be a little bit out of reach for a lot of collectors, because I think they're a little more expensive. But if you did something simpler, the only reason I'm entertaining the conversation is because so much of what you and I have been talking about is how rich this world is, and it's not just the characters and the figures. Like there's a lot of great design and thought going into, as you said earlier, like the villages and how each one's a different culture. So that's the only, honestly, that's where this comes from. It's like,
it feels like a shame to
yeah,
not have that in a physical form in the toy
yeah,
line. I agree
yeah,
completely.
yeah,
I agree with the sentiment completely too,
yeah.
that it's like the richness of this tapestry
Mm-hmm.
is so much more than just the figures that we're getting.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is why we want the mounts, which is why we
Yep.
want the play sets, which is
Yep.
why we want the bag of bones. You know, like I will take all of it. I want all of it.
Oh, the bag of bones. You've just triggered a lot of Star Wars folks. All right.
Not
So
enough of them, though. I didn't
yeah.
trigger enough of them.
Let's yeah. Well done. Okay, so I think that's essentially it for this episode. I think there was one thing, just because of logistics and do our due diligence of being true shills. Let's
Yes.
talk about the armor thing. So it's good to know. It's a good reminder, since we were talking about like the primal ancients that need armor. You can now order some armor.
There are 3 armor sets. There is effectively a Horde armor set, a Chunari armor set, and a Feralist armor set. So the Horde one is kind of the blues and purples. The Chunari one is reds and blues. And the Feralist one is like browns and blues. They all look phenomenal. They all look great. I mean, I need more figures now that they've released the armor packs, the primal ancients, plus the armor packs, plus the army builders. You can really build out a lot of like unique figures, so you can really fill out your Horde army or your Chunari army, or very very soon your Feralist army. So the Feralist Stalker, which is basically the army builder for the Feralist, is coming in wave 3 with an alternate head. Plus you can get the head pack, where you can sort of have different heads that'll work with that. Plus you can get the armor pack, get some weapons packs. You know, you can really, really go to town, and without much effort on your part, have some pretty good kit bashed custom figures.
Yep.
No paint required. Although if you do pop and swap, it does void your warranty. They are not designed to be pop and swap, but as you and I both know, it's pretty easy.
So let's just go ahead and walk through where you go find these things, right? Because it actually was a little bit tricky for me to even find them. Because so you go to Spiro Toys, and initially my thinking was, oh, maybe they're here in the accessory sets, but actually they've been sort of added to wave 3, right? And you'll sort of see these figures and you're like, whoa, like, are these new figures? And you have to, make sure you're doing your reading here. This is the armor set only. Figures sold separately. Right. So we've got, as you mentioned, Chunari, $13, $12.98 US. This again, armor only. This is the Fearless gear. And then we've got the Horrid gear. And yes, it is color, but it is actually sort of unique sculpt too, right? So you sort of see these pieces that we saw, similar to what Pale had going on. I love these sort of like what do you call them? Van braces. It is interesting that, again, it's a red blue like asymmetrical kind of thing. This is an aside. Can you put these on the right side, or are they pretty much molded to that side?
They're molded to fit the side that they're designed for. But that being said, if you're heating them up already, I don't think that they would be hard to swap. They might look a little bit off, but I think that they would fit. Like, there's enough volume in there. You know that there's enough volume. It just has a slightly different shape,
So there's that. There is, again, here, very bright colors, which is awesome, but it says Fearless gear, not necessarily what we saw in the comics, though, I don't think, right? Matching?
No, but it kind of does match what we saw in the airship. So I think that there's, like, I think that we've gotten sort of stuck on some of the colors being like specific. I think the Horde is like darker muted blues, and then Feralist has like some more vibrant blues.
And yet when we get to the Horde, though,
it's still very vibrant and very like, but it's Yeah, I don't even really know how to explain it because they're all vibrant colors. They're all really
Yeah.
bright and fun and like
Right.
exciting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like there's not, you know, in some lines that like GI Joe Classified is a good example where you know you get a character like Barbecue and people are like, oh, he's really gonna pop on the shelf. Every AWOK figure pops on the shelf.
Yeah.
There isn't like there isn't one where you're like it's kind of dull. Of all the figures that we've gotten so far, I think Atreyu is probably the dullest of the figures.
Browns on
Um,
browns.
but it's
Browns on
browns and
tans.
golds though. I mean, it still
Yeah.
looks really, really good.
Yeah.
And there's,
Yeah.
you know, the color palette is so dynamic that you don't like. I don't feel overwhelmed by any color.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas
Mm-hmm.
you know, GI Joe tends to see a lot of you know greens and browns and black, and Cobra's got tons of blue. But these, like, if you just look at that Wave 3 assortment, right, with the four figures from Wave 3, um, you can tell that two of them are Horde.
Yeah.
But there's so much going on there.
Yeah.
You know, the golds, the browns, the blues, the gray. Like it's just fun. I mean, this line is just it's just so interesting to look at.
It is, and we got to stop talking actually, because as we're doing this, I'm thinking I need to get a couple more of these. So, for the sake of my wallet and my shelf, let's go ahead and
Well,
close
Jason
it.
also did share that that's the that's the I can't remember what he called it, but it's sort of like the guard to the matriarch, and that
Oh,
at
these.
any
Um,
yeah the gold
over there.
armored Chinari,
Yep.
and that at any time there are 8 of them. So there's like only ever 8 guys that wear the gold armor. So the good news is you only have to get 8, and then you have that whole group.
Okay, great.
The bad
Thank
news
you.
is 8.
Yeah, and they don't make it easy either, considering they give you a deal for a 3-pack. So to get that, I gotta get 2 3-packs.
And then the 2 all-in pack.
Right. Oh
There you go.
man.
You got your 8.
All right. For the sake of my wallet, let's move on and go ahead and close out. That pretty much brings us to an end of another episode of AWOK Talk. We covered a good chunk of this issue without actually covering a good chunk of this issue. I think maybe we managed to cover 8 pages,
Mm-hmm.
which is my subtle way of saying you should definitely look back at episodes 1 and 2, but
Mm-hmm.
really you could ignore this whole show and just go to spirotoys.com, go get the comics yourself and read them and enjoy them. And if you want to geek out after that, come back and see us here on AWOK Talk. Yeah. So we will be seeing you again in 2 weeks after this video is dropped over on the
Mm-hmm.
Highly Calculated channel, doing some live AWOK Talk via Monkey Business. Is there anything between then that you would like to tell the folks that they should check out?
Well, I mean, I'm regularly doing my Sunday show. So Sunday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, is my go-to time slot. That's my regular time slot, and I'm trying to get some cool guests, some fun people to talk to. Um, Typically not going to be AWOK related when I have co-hosts and guests because I save those ones for Monkey Business. And then throughout the week, I do Open Late, which is live unboxing. It's not a review. It's just me hanging out, usually for about 40 minutes to an hour, opening up a couple of figures and just chatting with people. And that's it. Usually sort of devolves into just chat after I've opened the figures. But
Yeah, it's opening toys with friends, which is always
yeah.
more fun, as I've learned from you. Yeah, and I think over on Brick Something, we are very sporadic, and I don't, and that's fine. That's just the way things are. So the best way really to follow me would be to follow the link in the description to Instagram. It's basically at brick.something, and just subscribe here to the channel. We're a little over 350, which is great. I don't do a good job of celebrating those milestones, but yeah. 350 is great. I think this is the first time I've actually mentioned that milestone on camera. But I'm about to hit the anniversary on August 14th, my birthday. So it'll be 1 year old. So I'm happy with where things are going. If you'd like to subscribe and follow, that's definitely going to be the best way to keep track of it, because I try my best to send out community messages and, hip you to whatever's coming up on the channel. So that's another AWOK talk, I think, in the books. We will see you in 2 weeks over on Highly Articulated for some monkey business, and then another 2 weeks after that for the next episode of AWOK Talk. All right, folks. Have a great time. We'll see you next month, effectively. Woo!
Bye-bye.